Psychosis versus psychopathy. The words sound similar. Are they the same thing? That's what I'm talking about today. I'm Dr. Tracey Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. This topic is based on a viewer question. I think this is a common question that people have, and I think it's a common misconception that the two concepts are similar, but they are completely unrelated. Psychosis is a mental state where your sense of reality is altered. When you're in this state, you have trouble knowing what's real and what's not real. And there are different ways that you can manifest psychosis. One is in perceptual disturbances, like seeing things that aren't real or hearing things that aren't real. These are called hallucinations. You can also have delusions, which are fixed false beliefs. You believe things that are not true, like aliens are inhabiting our bodies and removing our organs at nighttime. This sounds absurd to the non-psychotic person because you know it's not possible to live without your organs. But for the person who's in the throes of delusional thinking, it's very real to them. Another psychotic symptom is extremely disorganized thinking. And this behavior is more than getting confused about things or not having all your ducks lined up in a row and therefore being disorganized. With this thought disorganization, also called a thought disorder, you have disjointed thoughts that are hard for people to understand. What you're saying may make sense in your head, but you lack the ability to put the thoughts together in a way that makes sense to the listener. Another thing you can do is have your thoughts be completely derailed. So you start talking about one thing and then move on to something else that may be only partially related to what you started talking about. This is called tangential thinking, where you go off on a tangent. In mathematics, a tangent is a line that touches a circle at only one point. Similarly, with tangential thinking, what you're saying may be only indirectly related to a minor point, and the rest has nothing to do with the original subject. That's psychosis. Psychopathy, on the other hand, is a set of personality traits whereby people disregard the rights of others and their behavior conflicts with social norms. Some of the traits developed by researchers Hervey Cleckley and Robert Hare are extreme lack of empathy, shallow emotional expression, also called shallow affect, little capacity for remorse, and superficial charm. Hervey Cleckley authored the book The Mask of Sanity, which referred to the way a psychopathic person can appear normal and even charming, but all the while their presentation is masking serious mental deficits. When you lack empathy, you can't see things from others' point of view. The shallow affect make them unable to experience real emotions. By having little capacity for remorse, they can hurt and exploit people and not feel bad about it. So this person does not struggle with being able to distinguish what's real and what's not real. Their tendency to exploit people is not based on losing touch with reality. In fact, they're very grounded in what they plan to do to get what they want. People high in psychopathy traits can end up in the criminal justice system, but they can also rise to the top of their fields because their ability to manipulate and exploit people works to their advantage when it comes to being successful. The superficial charm can turn them into Pied Pipers who lead people astray. You can see this in some cult leaders who attract people to them and then take advantage of them. It's like they have magical powers that make people listen and follow. The psychopath wouldn't be able to establish this kind of control if they had a thought disorder that made you not be able to understand them, or if they were delusional and saying absurd things that were obviously not true. So unlike the psychotic person, the psychopath gives off an air of being well put together. Just to give you another view of psychopathy, a relatively new model of psychopathy is called the Triarchic Model. It divides psychopathy into 3 domains: boldness, meanness, and disinhibition. Boldness refers to fearlessness, toleration of danger, and high self-confidence. The meanness domain includes lack of empathy, disregard for close attachments, and exploitative tendencies. And then the disinhibition domain refers to poor impulse control, inability to delay gratification, and possible frontal executive dysfunction. So you can see these characteristics are very different from symptoms of psychosis. Psychosis can happen to anyone in several different situations. Some medications can make you hallucinate, like high doses of steroids or morphine. People can become so depressed that they become delusional and think people are wanting to harm them. You can have a psychotic experience inside of mania. You can believe the president has commissioned you to create a new way to burn fuel using apples. These psychotic experiences are usually temporary and are a measure of the severity of the mood state. Once your depression or mania improve, so does your psychosis. Then there are the primary psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia, where you have at least two of the psychotic symptoms like delusions and disorganized thinking, as an example. With delusional disorder, you have compartmentalized delusions where you believe something that's not true, but you have high functioning in other areas. An example of this is erotomanic delusions, where you believe someone is in love with you. And this is sometimes the motive behind people who stalk. They are convinced that the person that they're stalking is in love with them and wants to be in their presence. Not everyone who stalks is delusional, but the ones who are can be very dangerous because their behavior isn't modified in response to logic and reason. You can't just talk them out of it. So there really isn't an intersection between psychosis and psychopathy. The two concepts are completely different. Sadly, I think some people regard mental illness, especially severe mental illness like psychosis, as something deviant that compares to the likes of psychopathy. But psychopathy refers to a set of deviant traits, whereas psychosis is an impaired mental state that is often temporary. Can a person who is high in psychopathy traits become psychotic? Yes, but the psychosis would be the result of an illness like depression, mania, schizophrenia, or even drug intoxication. It wouldn't stem from the psychopathy itself because the psychopathy doesn't affect your reality testing. So the only two things these concepts have in common is they both start with psych. That's where the similarity ends. If you haven't seen it already, watch this video on what it means to be sadistic. It's another concept people will lump together with psychopathy, but I explain how it's different. Thanks for watching. See you next time.